YouTube. This is way too long. This time not quite as the coach of the FC Survivor 04. This time with a more observing look about the whole PFL Season 1. Since you know the PFL Season 1 is over, we already had the draft. The champion, Manitoba Mobile, of course. But there are also some mons that really stood out in some stats and side stats, and I think this is a good opportunity to present them in a top 5, like luckiest, happiest Pokémon throughout this season, and the top 5 quite unlucky Pokémon through this season. Like the top 5, I wouldn't say the top 5 best and worst Pokémon overall, but like the most outstanding in the best stats and the worst stats. So without further ado, I would say we start with the worst stats, so we get them behind and end the video with nice positive stats. Oh yeah, please keep in mind that this list is mostly made out of my observations, of my evaluations of the whole situation of the stats. I try to keep bias out of it, but of course people will have different opinions. That's what Pokemon games teach us, at least since Black and White. And yeah, probably you think this Pokemon shouldn't be in the unlucky list, it shouldn't be in the lucky list. These are just my observations. Let's start the countdown to the top 5 unluckiest Pokemon after PFL Season 1. Number 5. Since this league allows Ubers, basically the worst Uber from the whole list, from the whole competing Ubers, has to be in this list, since Ubers are a big part of this league. And since Ubers didn't do so well overall this season, there has to be one that gave like the worst performance. And this was the Deoxys defense of the Chicago White Sox. It was used 4 times in the whole season. It got 0 kills and died 3 times. And the only really thing it does was hazard sticking. Of course, it's Deoxys defense, it's called defense for a reason, but it didn't do like anything throughout the season. But since that's its nature, being mainly defensive, not getting kills at all, that's only number 5. Here are the next 4 that got more unlucky than Deoxys defense. Number 4. At number 4, we have Milotic of the Green Bay Leafs, the former Portland Blazikens, since it was drafted from the Portland Blazikens. And it's mainly here because it got like the second worst overall performance of this league. If you look at the expanded stats, it's second last place. 4 matches played, 0 kills, basically doing nothing, and it died. It fainted 4 times with almost 0 impact on the battle, since only one of the battles where it's brought the Green Bay Leafs even won. I said it's second last, but you might ask now, I talked about outstanding in some stats. Why is Milotic here if it's only the second worst performance overall? This is mainly because it's outstanding in another negative kind of stat, since throughout the season I kind of looked which Pokemon got the first kill of the match, which teams got the first kills, and of course with that, which Pokemon mostly were the victims of the first kills. And basically the champion of this, together with Azelf, is Milotic, with being three times the first Pokemon to faint in the whole battle. Azelf did quite a bit better, but not that better. It's out of 102 ranks, it's rank 98, but it only died 3 times, so Milotic worst performance overall, plus mostly being the first victim earns Milotic number 4 in this rank of the most unlucky Pokemon. Number 3. Yeah, at number 3 it had to be of course the Pokemon with the worst performance overall for the season, even worse than Milotic, which is Clefable. And though you did not quite see this in the expanded stats, where it is actually tied with 0 kills and 4 deaths together with Milotic and Stormy, you can say that Clefable has the worst stat, since the replay of the last match wasn't saved. But we know it was brought to the match, that's what we know, and we know it definitely fainted. And as far as I remember it didn't get a kill, so it's basically 0 kills, 5 deaths, which makes Clefable basically the worst performing Pokemon throughout the season without doing much. Number 2. Since we covered the Pokemon with the worst performances throughout this league, you can say there are more unlucky Pokemon. And definitely more unlucky is our number 2, Roselia of the Green Bay Leafs, aka the Portland Blaziken's. Also was drafted by the Portland Blaziken's in the regular draft. It was on the team for 8 weeks and it didn't get to play 1 match without even being dropped. So it's basically kept at the team, hoping to get at least 1 match played, and throughout the season not 1 match was played for poor little Roselia, which earns it number 2 at the top 5 unluckiest Pokemon of the PFL season 1. Number 1. So we had the worst performing Pokemon from this, and even one that was the whole season there without even one match played. You can ask, what is worse? And here our number 1 had actually a worse time at the PFL season 1, which is Skarmory. Why is Skarmory so unlucky? Not only didn't it play 1 match, long story short, it was drafted twice. First in the regular draft from the Ontario Oma Stars, then it was dropped, then later with the switch, the coach switch from the Portland Blazikens to the Green Bay Leafs, it was picked up again as a trade for Landorus, and then like few weeks later it was dropped again. So this poor Pokemon was drafted twice and was dropped twice without even playing 1 match. What could be more unlucky than this poor little steel bird, earning it ranked number 1 as the unluckiest Pokemon of PFL Season 1. But now to something more positive, since of course there are way more positive stats for Pokemon that got really to play a lot and did a lot of work for their teams. So let's get them covered. And for this list I like to bring in a little more backstory, which I think it makes this list a lot more interesting if you actually don't look just at the stats but also at the backstories of the Pokemon themselves. Number 5. So as number 5, we don't have a really big surprise. It kind of has to be in this list. It should be in every list of this sort for every draft league. It is just here because it has to be here. Mega Lopunny of the New York Metangs. It got second in the MVP race with 15 kills, which is not so much a surprise since it is Mega Lopunny. If you draft Mega Lopunny, you should at least be able to make the playoffs, or at least it should be able to claim a high spot in the MVP rank since it is Mega Lopunny. So in this season, and mainly because it's not so much of a surprise that it's only rank 5 here, but it's also outstanding in one little side stat, which I already mentioned with like the first blood stats, which I kind of observed. And here it is actually tied at the top together with Conkeldurr of the Manitoba Mobiles and Victini of the Fighting Floatzots. They all got to get the first kill of the whole match 3 times throughout the season, while actually the whole champ of the first blood rank are the Fighting Floatzots with 7 first kills in a match throughout the whole season, which are 9 matches for them, which is pretty impressive. And with their main first blood taker Victini, of course Mega Lopunny got a lot better standing throughout the season in the MVP race with 15 kills, so that's why it does take a spot in this list before Conkeldurr and Victini. Number 4. At number 4 we have the leader of another side stat, which is Mega Venusaur. And Mega Venusaur is there because it got the most passive kills throughout the season. 4 kills passive without even touching your opponent. Mega Venusaur basically just sits there, poisons the opponent, leech seeds the opponent, and then waits for them to faint. It is the champion throughout this with 4 kills. The next ones are, I know it is, Druddigon has 2, but yeah, the next ones have only 2. Mega Venusaur, champion of passive kills, proud member of the Chicago White Sox. And also here, for a little side stat, together with Mega Lopunny and Shaman Sky, Mega Venusaur, well, these 3 are the only Pokemon that were brought in every single match throughout the regular season. So basically the exact opposite of poor little Roselia. Number 3. So at number 3 we have, in my opinion, not that much of an outstanding stat taker, but here the backstory is way more important than the pure stats. Our number 3 is Flygon of the Fighting Floatzots. And why is it here? It got the best kill ratio for the Fighting Floatzots. It got 9 kills throughout the season, giving it rank number 3, the bronze medal of the whole league. 9 kills, 3 deaths throughout the main season. Of course, number 3 is not outstanding, and being the number 1 for one team isn't that outstanding either. But the funny thing here is that Flygon was definitely not the favorite member of the coach of the Fighting Floatzots. It was basically treated like poor little stepchild. It was even named Trash, and it performed so well just to prove it is not trash, taking the number 1 spot in the Fighting Floatzots internal list, taking number 3 in the whole league list, just to prove it. And yeah, I think this earns it, definitely the number 3 spot at the top 5 luckiest Pokemon of the season. Number 2, and since I already talked about how important, or at least how special the position of Ubers are in this league, of course I have to cover, since I covered Deoxys Defense as the worst Uber, I have also to cover the best Uber, which also is the only Uber that made it to the top 10 list, or even to the top 5 list, claiming rank 5 in the overall expanded league standings. Genesect of the New York Metangs, with 8 kills and only 1 deaths, even with a little sweep in this season, making it the best Uber of the PFL season 1. And since it is a league with the little gimmick that it allows Ubers, yeah, the best Uber being Genesect has to be here. Even has to be number 2 since it performed so well, claiming a really high spot in the MVP rank. Number 1. Yeah, and number 1, as you might have known it, basically has to be the MVP of the PFL Season 1, being Lucario of the Chicago White Sox with 16 kills and 4 deaths. Same differential as Megalopony, but of course more kills make you the MVP. But this number 1 here, even in my list, is not only because of the pure stats being the MVP of the whole season. It is also the little backstory that Lucario was originally not drafted. It was picked up as a free agency trade, week 2, from the Chicago White Sox, since former champ, the champ got brought week 1, got destroyed by a certain Excadrill with Earthquake, basically got one-shot, and yeah, the Chicago White Sox immediately dropped Machamp for Lucario, and even with 1 week less than every other contendant in this list in the MVP race, like Megalopony, Flygon, Mega Magnetic and Genesect, even with this 1 match, week 1 missing, Lucario made the MVP spot, and I think this is worthy of making it the number 1 luckiest Pokemon of PFL Season 1. And with this words, this was way too long. Concluding Season 1 of the PFL, we already had our draft for Season 2, and I hope for Season 2 I can bring you a similar video. And with this, peace out.